He returned me to viewing my body from above, and my African mama, Mamietan, had found me, pulled my lifeless body up into her lap, and she was stopping the blood flow. My life was saved by an African woman singing to me, calling me back to life with her medicine song. Every living being, every frog, the mountain, each person is a gem in this matrix, and that we can enliven this matrix with our loving kindness. Beyond our story, beyond the different details of what we've all lived through, there's that seed essence that needs to be sung to help us remember to feel that truth of who we are.
Guy here. My beautiful guest today is Robin Lansong. And if you're watching this, I am so happy because I don't remember a time I've been moved so much when doing a podcast. This conversation honestly blew my mind. And I'm not saying this lightly. What I highly recommend you do is create a bit of space in your day and really hone into this conversation. Robin also uses her singing voice throughout the conversation, as well as she's sharing her journey, her story, and how she contributes to the world today now. Honest, like mind blowing. Like, wow. She is a transformational speaker, a visual artist, a medicine singer, and a medical health intuitive. Please listen to it in its entirety. Share this with a loved one or friend. I'm going to get her back on the podcast at some stage to dive more into what she does, because her experiences through childhood and her near-death experiences are extremely moving and very profound. And I feel this podcast is going to sit with me for a long time. So just grateful. Please support her. She's releasing a new book, I believe. It comes up on the podcast as well. Links are below. And of course, if you want to find out where we are in the world, we'll be running our Live and Flow retreats through 2025. We're going to be in Bali very soon, Australia in the winter in June, and Croatia in Split. Come along, dive in, you won't regret it. Links are below as well. Much love from me. Be sure to let me know on YouTube, the comments below, what you think of this podcast and what you get out of it, and let me know where you are in the world. Much love. Robin, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me here, Guy.
I'm excited to see where this conversation goes. And like I mentioned off air, about the third or fourth person where Mount Shasta has come up in conversation as well, which I'm no doubt will come up in this topic today, this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So first question I ask everyone, you're at an intimate dinner party, you're sitting next to a complete stranger, and they ask you, what do you do for a living? How would you respond?
I sing to people to nurture their soul.
Wow. So my first response would have to be, what are the benefits of singing to nurture the soul?
You know, it's so interesting. Of course, it's not for everybody, but those who it lands for, those who it's resonant for, it can do a whole breadth of things, from create body sensations, physical, emotional healing. And what I'm doing when I'm singing is saying with my voice, with the nurturing, I see you, you're real, you matter. And that witnessing people is big medicine. And that so many people are aching for that feminine nurturing, to have our nervous system, have our being, have our essence, our truth be seen. And that includes both our vulnerability, our strengths. So the full spectrum of who we are, both the part of us that rose up in amazingly difficult circumstances and the part of us that's still hurting or grieving. So all of it's true, and that's what I sing to.
Wow. You know, it's interesting because we did a sound test off air just now, right? Which the listeners wouldn't have heard you sing yet. And I've literally just got back from running my 5-day retreat, and I still feel quite open, you know, and I sat there, and as soon as you started singing, I wanted to cry. I'm like, oh my God, like, you know, can you explain to people how singing and sound can affect one's emotions and how one's emotions can support our healing journey?
That's such a good question. And then I'll go ahead and sing. So again, we all need to be witnessed. We all need to be seen. And how many of us are aching for a little bit of that nurturing? And so the way the singing medicine got opened in me, and we'll get, of course, more into this, is that my life was saved by a woman, an African woman, singing to me, calling me back to life with her medicine song. And so I had the choice in my near-death experience to keep going to the Great Heart, to reunite with the source that sung me into being. And there's the idea in Hinduism that I didn't know as a child, that this great presence that I call the Great Heart sung each person, each drop of us who are an aspect of divine source, and that seed syllable of who we are is what I'm saying I see you to. So beyond our story, beyond the different details of what we've all lived through, there's that seed essence that needs to be sung to help us remember our essence, to feel that, just that truth of who we are.
Wow. Can we go into your story for a moment then? And then we'll bring it round and then we can go into a song, if that's okay. So you mentioned
There's plenty of singing, so we can do a lot of times.
So you mentioned near-death experience. Now, I was looking through your bio this morning. I also mentioned I purposely haven't listened to many of your interviews because I want to come in with that curiosity and innocence. And Rhodesian War in 1977, I mean, that stood out to me like, holy moly, as a 8-year-old, sorry, in 1977. What was happening in your life at the time, and how did you end up having a near-death experience?
I'm American. I was born on the East Coast of the U.S. So 1977 is post-Vietnam War. It's pre-Child Protective Services in America. And so I was spotted by a man in my neighborhood, and he watched that I walked home from school. I was in a household where I wasn't being protected. So, kids who are coming from a household where they're valued and protected, they walk different. And so this man chose to abduct me. And I knew immediately my life was in danger. I knew he was, by the way he moved, by the way he spoke, by the way he was skillful in how he grabbed me and assaulted me. I could tell that he was trained military. And so he drugged me, took me out of the U.S., which in 1977 was quite easy. And when I became conscious again, I didn't know that I was in Rhodesia, which is now Zimbabwe, at the height of the Civil War. And so he assaulted me, broke my ribs on this side. Somebody ended up pulling me away from him. So that was kind of my first brush with death. Angel came down. I was on the floor in the kitchen of this stranger who had pulled me away from him assaulting me. And this angel showed up, and I was like, great, I'm done. It's been 8 miserable years. She's going to take me back. And I could tell she was an angel because I could see through her. And then I could talk directly to her in my mind.
Oh.
And she started reassuring me. And I was like, I don't want reassurance. I want the ticket out of here. And she said, it's not your time to die. And I said, that's not what I want to hear. I want a new angel. And I was kind of like, can I talk to your boss? This is not the answer I want. And so I ended up being taken to a nearby hospital. I've been able to retrace my steps and find that hospital, and even find that hospital bed. And the privilege of being able to get to go back and retrace my steps has allowed me a level of integration of the magnitude of trauma that I lived through. And so moving forward and what happened back when I was 8 years old, he came and got me out of the hospital. Nobody stopped him. And he ended up giving me to another man who we got on a bus. The bus broke down, and basically he left me in the bush. And so my chances of survival in the Rhodesian War, a white child alone in the bush, was really next to nothing. And so many people, especially when I go back, they say it's God's grace that you're alive. And I didn't understand, it could either be from soldiers or from wild animals that could have been the end of me. So I ended up being picked up by some of the more extreme soldiers. And part of the reason I love to share my story and that I wrote my book is because it's the goodness of the people who saved my life during that war. It would have been so easy for me to be one of the 24,000 civilians who died in that war and just be unknown. But he chose to save my life from the other soldiers who wanted to shoot me. So he took me out of there, and he took the risk to drive me to a village that he thought might be sympathetic to a white child. And so I spent the night in a tree by myself. And it might sound like I would have been very desperate, but I was finally free of danger. Again, I didn't know I'm from America, so I didn't understand the magnitude of the animals that can climb a tree like I did. And in the morning, it was the women singing that drew me in, because he dropped me near a village, but I didn't go into the village because there was, I thought, barking dogs, which were probably hyenas off in the distance. And so in the morning, I heard their singing. And my singing is different than theirs because the nature of what I've been given for medicine songs is different culturally and just from my soul. So I'm going to just sing something like what they sang.
Please.
While they were grinding food, and it was calling me in. And the women set out food and water for me, and they were welcoming me in, even though it was so surprising for them to see a white child. So other people came over, and I got welcomed in. And they probably assumed I was white Rhodesian and that my family had been killed and that I was, just making it away from that situation. They had no idea that I was American. And again, they welcomed me in. And the children came over and touched my white skin. My hair was more blonde then. And for the first time in my life, I felt storied in, welcomed in, sung in to belonging. So again, I'm going to share when one of the mothers called me over to her. And again, I'm very defended. My ribs are broken. I have a bruise, from the top of my back to the bottom of my back. And she sang to me. And it was kind of saying, "Come here to me, child." And this is the first mothering I've experienced in my life. Like I said, my family was very confused from generational disruption on how to care for their young, how to care for their own children. So my mom was not a nurturing person. So to be sung to, held, welcomed in, really taught me how to be a human being. It's changed the trajectory of who I am in this world. So they taught me how to plant corn with them. They welcomed me in ceremony. And of course, they didn't speak any English. They spoke Venda. But I was learning so much just by gesture and by being held and slept next to and belonging. So that was really the primary language of love that I was receiving from these rural Zimbabwean people. And so I didn't understand the magnitude of the war that was going on. And so the women took me to the nearby creek, and there's clay in the bottom of that creek. And they undressed me and they put clay on the bruise from where I had been kicked and assaulted and my ribs were broken. And they sang to me because they were trying to get the hatred that came with the assault off me so I wouldn't go through life thinking that revenge was something
Wow.
that I was interested in. And so again, they're singing to me in this really fierce, fiery way because they wanted to clear me off and remind me how to sing. Show he oh yo oh he So may that singing clear away any confusion, any woundedness that might still be confusing your nervous system about how you want to go forward in your purpose, in your aliveness. And so what happened was I went back to that creek by myself since it was a place of positive experience for me. And I didn't understand there was a battle right next to that creek starting. And there was a soldier scouting the perimeter. And he spotted me and I froze like a rabbit. And he immediately pulled up his gun and his skin was black, just like the people who were being so loving to me. And so I couldn't understand why he had such hatred for me when these other people had such loving kindness for me. So very quickly I could see, he was so close, I could see his finger close to the trigger. And I was in my heart begging for mercy. But his eyes were clouded over and he could no longer see with compassion. And, years and generations of oppression and violence had distorted his heart from being able to see me as an innocent child. He pulled the trigger. The bullet grazed the top of my head, blew me off my feet, and slammed me down to the ground. And I immediately began dying of blood loss. My consciousness went up above and was looking down, feeling so sad, but also so free. And so I knew if this something important, this kind of essence that had a kind of seagrass aliveness to it, didn't go back into my heart, that would be the end of me. And so as I watched the lights go out in my body and my heart just began to be silent, completely still, my consciousness went back down into my heart, out through the back, and I began to travel. And I arrived in a place where there was 2 women who greeted me. And they were like my older sisters. And their skin was black and their dresses were yellow. And it was my sisters. And they were welcoming me home, welcoming me to spaciousness, purity, a place where not only is all forgiven, but there's nothing even to forgive because everything is simply learning. And that includes the soldier shooting me, that forgiveness includes him. And so I now realize it was the 2 women who had mothered me in the village, who were already greeting me on the other side, even though that they were still living. And so they told me I could go home to Source, but I wasn't done yet. And I kind of resisted that easier path because I'd finally found family and I wanted to go back to this lifetime. So that confusion sent me to another realm. There I met a being who showed me how to purify all the emotion that I had repressed in my 8 years, all the wanting to fight back against the abuse I had experienced, everything that was in me that was going to be a block to receive the magnitude of the love from the great heart. He let me witness, experience, so that I could purify it out of my system. So again, that I would be ready to receive what was up ahead of me. And he showed me again that I could go home to this great source, this easier path. But I resisted again because I so wanted to be connected again to this lifetime. And then I was shown a premonition of the future when I did come back. And that everyone from my village, everybody who was new, my new family, was on the ground, not able to call back to me. And that it would be great suffering when I returned. And so I cried and cried while I was on the other side. And I believe getting in this premonition made it so I could survive what was going to happen when I came back in the war. So again, more beings I got to meet, and one of them I call my royal shepherd. And when I ran to him, kind of in desperation to get back to my family, when I stood before him, he was pure peace. He was like a still alpine lake with not a ripple. And I had no disturbance in his presence. And he touched his forehead to mine, and I could see as he sees. And I went into this realm that's like a living matrix, like a golden spider web that was multidimensional, where at each intersection of the web, there's a gem, which is each of us. Every living being, every frog, the mountain, each person is a gem in this matrix. And that we can enliven this matrix with our loving kindness. And that when we go into self-beratement, self-criticism, we are denying the fact that we are a gem of divine source. We are a drop, a golden drop in this web of life. And so one of the things I like to teach is helping people get from self-criticism, which is actually a kind of a shutting down, and we become too busy inventorying what's wrong with me, rather than comprehending that we are created by divinity. So our job is to purify, to take care of this vessel through good food, clean living, mindful focus, so that we can show up in the glory, in the brilliance of being our divine assignment. So when he stood back up, and I understood that we are all connected, and that even if I lost my newfound African family, I could belong in this universal family. And again, belong to the land, belong to the song, belong to the goodness in each person's heart. So he returned me to viewing my body from above, and my African mama, Mamietan, had found me, pulled my lifeless body up into her lap, and she was stopping the blood flow. And she was wailing into the sky. And I wanted to let her know, and I want to let all the listeners know, that once I crossed over, I was free of physical pain. I was so guided, I was so held, and it was just all purification to be able to receive the magnitude of love that is available to us when we cross over. So I journeyed upward, and I've done a lot of art about this. One of the gifts given to me from this death experience is to be a visionary artist and a professional intuitive. And so I journeyed upward, and again, more purification, going home to the great source. And just as I was getting ready to reunite, sometimes just the wave goes over me of gratitude, the feeling and the brilliance of what it is to be so close to divine source. And my mama in this lifetime had changed her wailing to singing. And then she called on the ancestors in the land to call me back to life. And so I heard this calling song as I was about to merge with Source. And hearing this song awakened my memory that I am part of the choir of medicine singers, those who sing at birth, those who sing when people are dying, singing to people to help their body restore, their soul and their being restore. And so I chose to turn around and come back to be one of the medicine singers on this planet, those who are helping out in the healing of our woundedness, of our confusions. And so I returned back to my body. And again, my mama was holding me, and I felt barely here. I felt like the wind could blow through me. I felt like kind of crackly, dry leaves back in this frail physical body. And it was their singing and their touch and their putting plants kind of near the wound. And again, they sang to get the hatred off the bullet that came across my head, so I wouldn't go through life thinking that getting back at people was something worthwhile. And so the soldiers did come back 2 days later, and they attacked the village. And one of the other mothers put me on her hip, and she was running. And the bullets came from behind, shot her from behind. I went down to the ground. I got my bleeding started again. And she was yelling at me to keep going, just to keep running. And I wanted to pull her with me, but I couldn't. I was too little, and so that's been one of the hardest things for me to heal from. And that other people who have survivor guilt, they made it through and other people didn't, can understand that that is harder to heal than me being shot. So I kept running. I've been able to go back and retrace my steps. So I was running on a sandy hill, and the blood loss, I fell forward and I had a second death experience. And I just want to say, too, all of this is in my book that is now finished. And so I'll just give the kind of nutshell of that.
Please. Yeah, I'm so captivated.
Okay. I'll give the nutshell of that second death experience. So I had just lost everyone, everything. And I just lost the people who taught me what love is. And so I crossed over, and this was a very different experience. It was a blank landscape. And there was a song being sung to me. You will live, you will live. And that's a kind of the rhythm of a child's nursery song that I was taught when I was little. And this being was telling me I'm going to live because he wished it to be so. And he brought me closer to him, and he was showing me a record. And the kind of stylus came off the record, and I looked at the record and I said, but this record's so scratched it should be thrown away. And in this huge booming voice, he said, the marks, the woundedness is where you are broken open so I can find you and connect to you. So part of the reason I love to share my death experiences is that we trauma survivors are not broken people. We are broken open so that we know when other people need mercy, when people need compassion, just as we did when we were on our knees, not knowing how we were going to go forward. So he taught me, out of destruction comes new creation. And that when we don't know how we're going to take our next breath, when everything we thought was stable is now in pieces in front of us, that is when we are so vulnerable that we need to call on something greater than ourselves, call on divine source. And that often people who have been through great loss, been through great trauma, have had the opportunity to dive deep into their spiritual connection, because you can't just make it on your own will. And that's what he taught me. He returned me back to my body, and he gave me his strength to literally crawl forward to a well where a woman, Mia Lucy, came the next day and found me. She washed the blood off me, took me back to her homestead. And again, she is another one of the people why I'm not just a statistic in that war. And that when other neighbors saw she had a wounded white child, they said, "It's too dangerous. Just let her go. It's not worth the risk to you." And she said back to them, "She's a living human being. I won't throw her away." So she took the risk to hide a white child during that war that was about reclaiming land and the fight between the white government and the indigenous people. She got me across the Limpopo River to a white farming family in South Africa. They got me to a hospital. From there, I was sent back to the U.S. And people often ask, "Oh, how was it to be reunited with your family?" And again, so many people can understand a family system that has generational denial that's so intense they cannot hear the truth. So when I tried to speak of it, my mother hit me and said, "Don't ever talk about this." They never asked me what happened. They never, got me any help. They just told me, like, it's normal that your ribs are broken and that you get these headaches. And they told me nothing was wrong with me and that I was just complaining too much. And so I got no therapy. I got at that time, and I just put it all underground, which comes at a very big cost to the nervous system, to our biology, to repress that much. So when I went to college, I had a kind of a complete meltdown. All the memories of the abuse started coming up. I went into inpatient post-traumatic stress treatment centers, and that began my journey. And, you spoke of kind of a big transformation in your life. So I'm very grateful I started my healing so young. And that's all I did in my 20s was just do trauma therapy, trauma resolution, everything I could, body work, EMDR therapy, talk therapy. And what I want to get across to other trauma survivors is that attending to your adrenal health, and the adrenals are a little organ on top of the kidneys. That's kind of our startle response, our, get up and run. That attending to that through good diet and through herbal supplements is an essential part of trauma recovery, and it's often not spoken about. So I really like to get that out there, because you can't get that far if you don't take vitamin B, vitamin C, and herbs for your adrenals.
No words, Robin. Dang, I had no idea. Honestly, I had no idea. I've been podcasting a long time, over 10 years, and what you've been through and what you shared then is just, profound. So thank you. I really appreciate it. Is the first thing I want to say.
My honor.
When we're looking at trauma, and, clearly trauma affects us all, I believe, especially in modern day society. I mean, it's like an extreme sport out there sometimes in terms to our nervous system as well. Do you feel that most people are only becoming aware of it when the noise is so loud that we start to address it? Or do you feel that people are becoming more proactive and understanding this work and actually taking it on board, and is becoming a recognized healing modality? Because I know if I went to the doctor with some pain, the last thing they're probably going to assess me with is my history, my trauma and upbringing, compared to numbing the symptom.
Right. So there's a couple of things that have changed the conversation, how the conversation is happening. One is functional MRI. So seeing kind of how the brain functions under stress in live has really validated post-traumatic stress. And so there's a couple of other pieces just that we're starting to get some more effective methodologies like EMDR therapy. I know some people are having good luck with ketamine. So there's starting to be more effective means. Therefore, there's not this tremendous hopelessness of like, oh, it's in the past, just put it behind you. And one of my teachers, my herbalist teachers said, it's in your nervous system in the present until it is healed. So yes, the events are in the past, but the disturbance, the agitation, the lack of sleep, the lack of freedom emotionally is presently in your nervous system. And that's why I love helping people. And this is what I do for work. I sing to people. I work with nervous systems. I'm a craniosacral therapist, which is working with the rhythm in the body, the cerebrospinal fluid. So I think the more success methodologies there are, kind of the more willing we're able to have a conversation because it isn't so hopeless. And again, feeding ourselves good nutrition, whole food diet is the number one thing we can do to change our ACEs score. So you just referred to something very important. So the ACEs score, I can't remember what year they did that research, but they researched all these people with diabetes and all these stress-related illnesses and asked about their childhood and their stressors in childhood. And they made the obvious correlation between not getting needs met, incredible stresses in childhood, like a parent being imprisoned or not having enough income or food, and stress-related illnesses later on. So the beauty of this news is that as you know, the gift of taking responsibility for our lives. And I think I see a lot of interviews that are about kind of predicting the future. And so my prediction for the future is, as we take responsibility, as we don't put off our healthcare just on the healthcare system, but we say, what can I learn today to address my body and my life? That kind of sense of responsibility, that's the future of healthcare. And that we always might need help with, other practitioners, and there's no shame in needing that kind of help or surgery, or especially for immediate things. But if we can prevent a whole lot of stress-related illnesses, then we get to show up in our divine purpose even better. And so I have a huge commitment. I don't eat any sugar. I haven't for 14 years. I won't for the rest of my life. I'm gluten-free. I'm dairy-free. I cook whole foods every day, every meal. And that's my commitment to divine source. And that when I can meditate and have focus in my heart and transmit, I love I do a transmission meditation for groups in person and online, where I drop back into my death experience and then I transmit from my heart the love and the beings from the other side. And it's so humbling because people directly feel like my mama come to them and sing to them, or one of the beings I met on the other side come and help them with their attachment trauma or their vulnerability. So it's a great privilege to have done so much of my trauma work, and it took decades, that I'm now in this position where, like I say, I finished my book after 16 years of writing.
When was it released?
November, this past fall, 2024.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's fresh.
Oh, amazing. I had no idea. I apologize again. Because I found your email in my email inbox from somebody who was representing you asking, but it was like 6 or 9 months old, and it somehow got lost in a chain. And I found it the other day, and I was like, how did I miss this? It was meant to be now, clearly. But
Yeah. So I did my own audio book. So I did the narration and there's singing. So, when I when I share the part about my mama holding me and singing to me, there's singing there. And there's recording from ceremony of when I went back to Zimbabwe. And so that's, we recorded that live. So that's in the audiobook. And we even managed to make a couple funny parts in the audiobook with sound effects. So people can check that out for themselves. Right now it's on Audible.
Amazing. Yeah, I hope everyone goes out and supports you with this. I can't imagine anyone not listening to this podcast won't go out and grab a copy and listen to more, Robin. I mean, what unbelievable. My mind's skipping around a bit because I'm leaning into some of the spiritual aspects you speak about, and then the more kind of physical trauma healing aspects as well. And I want to touch on both a little bit more. And one thing that keeps presenting itself for me to have a conversation around is with that experience, your introduction to Earth and what you went through initially in the early stages and everything. What are your thoughts on, or direct experiences with, we choose these lives that we come in to learn. We have a greater purpose. I've had different conversations around that, that we get to go again and keep coming back and having different experiences as well for the growth of our soul and the greater consciousness and the heart. I mean, what are your thoughts on all of this after what you've been through?
Mm-hmm. So I'll kind of combine both our subjects. So first, if you had said that to me when I was 20 and I was in kind of like what I call the gritty years of healing, I wouldn't have been so receptive to that. You would have gotten a lot of anger.
Absolutely.
And so I think if people are early on in their trauma recovery, just to focus on the nervous system before like it kind of more advanced spiritual practices is my recommendation. Because people can do a spiritual bypass of kind of trying to make it right, make it good, accept it too soon before they've actually gone through the anger, the gritty, shadowy, challenging things. So at this point, now that I'm, many decades into my healing, and the bigger spiritual picture, I think my assignment that, whether I gave it to myself or it was given to me, was, can I remain loving in the face of hatred? And so I got tested on that. Can I remain loving in the face of hatred? And I will say at certain points, it's loving to protect yourself. So at times with the abuse I experienced in America, I had to fight back with everything I had. And so from a spiritual point of view, I was being loving to protect myself or other children by whatever means I needed to. So, and during my healing process, my gritty years, I was incredibly angry, and I had, of course, tons of bitterness towards my family, my parents. And the forgiveness process was very bodily. It was very through my nervous system, through my organs, through my body. So I didn't do a spiritual bypass at all. I just literally sweated it out. And I had an incredible... So we can forgive in many different ways, and don't rush forgiveness. Feel all the anger you need to feel. Feel all the disgust you need to feel. I used to be so repulsed by the fact that this soldier shot me, I would actually throw up. And I had to go through that on a body level before I could get to where I am now. And so by the time I went back 40 years later, another big wave of emotion, and we found the exact place where I stood by that creek. And because of all my healing process, because of everyone who has helped me, it was beyond forgiveness. There was nothing to forgive. I could just see his life in generations of oppression. And I could see his life in the context of history. And so that when he looked at me, he didn't see a child, he saw the daughter of the oppressor. And so that's how big and expansive I've arrived to with so many people's help in my healing process. And so don't rush anything. Just allow yourself to be where you are and just continue to commit to your next step. Movement, embodiment, good, healthy, clean living, good relationships. Now dance is my therapy. I go to partner dance workshops and just moving in relation to how does it feel in my spine to be with this music and another human being in this group context. So drumming, creating music, retreats like yours, these are the path of wholeness, of aliveness, and commitment to be spiritual source through a human body here.
Thank you. I feel really emotional myself. It's yeah, I'm just trying to keep my words together for you, Robin. Wow. Looking at the bigger picture and one of my thoughts is I truly hope you'd come back on the podcast later on in the year and we can unpack the trauma aspects more and what you do, because it's phenomenal. I just feel like we're just scratching the surface really, and how you support the world. But when you look at you've talked about on YouTube, there seems to be a lot of videos about making predictions, and this was your prediction, all these kind of things it's just constant at the moment. So, and clearly Earth is in a transition. There's a feeling of, for me anyway, a coming togetherness, not separation, and people are starting to understand this work more and more. How do you see it moving forward? Do you feel that we are going to really start to understand it, even through people that are running our countries, the politicians? They're all looking through a lens of trauma. I truly see that in the shape. There's this, there's such this masculine push, but it's
Right.
breaking. And it's like, if we actually embodied these things that you talk about and were taught it would, I mean, maybe I'm just romanticizing here, but I feel it would change everything.
Mm-hmm. And, again, we're doing this recording in January 2025, where we just had our inauguration in the US, and it's mind-boggling what's happening. And so my question is, apparently we need to go so much into the shadow of misaligned masculine, into entitlement, into lack of accountability. We apparently, at least America needs to work through the ignorance around this. And I have this feeling that because the oppression is going to become so obvious, so grotesque kind of in America, that this rising up, because we can't watch what's going to happen and just stand and not do something. So my feeling is aligned masculine, men are going to find their aligned masculine and step into the ways that they have power. Women, people who, human beings who have a feminine body are going to step into coming together in a way that maybe has never been seen, of people looking at their internalized oppression because the oppression on the outside is so grotesque. And so I was absolutely devastated when election results came out. I literally I couldn't even comprehend the level of ignorance and the level of entitlement and the lack of accountability. But I just think it's the shadow so present that, all the rape survivors are going to speak out. All the women who don't want to stay in an abusive marriage are going to say enough. And I've recently been educated about a younger generation of women in Korea are refusing to marry, are refusing to have children. The kindergartens are empty, and they are trying to bring to light the disparity of what happens if women try to work, and all the oppression that has been going on for generations and generations, and they're just refusing. We're not participating in this anymore. And the fact that literally they're having to shut down schools because there are no kindergartners, they haven't had babies. So I think this is the reckoning of divine masculine, divine feminine, standing up in a way that says, no more.
Mm.
This is not happening. This subtle, overt oppression, violence, no more. And, I think there's always going to be people having to learn the hard way, but I think there's going to be a coming together of those of us who are interested in wholeness, in health, in loving kindness, in safety in the nervous system, and creating that for one another. Because what I learned through being saved by people in Zimbabwe and my going back 40 years later and reuniting with those people is equality is created by giving experiences of belonging. And so where can we create belonging here so that we have the capacity to extend that to others? Where can we just greet someone, make eye contact, and energetically say, you belong?
Mm.
That's equality. And if we build that in ourselves, build that in our families, where we do listen compassionately, where we do become skillful. I took a really great training through Stanford on compassion, and just being still with suffering and witnessing it and then taking action to relieve it if we can is the definition of compassion. And I want to say too, because there is so much horrible news, overwhelming cruelty in the world, that when we see something that we can't take physical action, we can't go, help the relief in the Los Angeles fires at the moment, we can still do prayer. And that prayer is still powerful, compassionate action. We can see their suffering, not turn away from it, and say, this too belongs. Their heartbreak, their losses, this too belongs in the spectrum of human experiences. And I'm wishing them one moment of relief from that suffering. I'm wishing them a clean glass of water. So whatever simple, no matter how small, it makes a difference in the world because it changes us. And then we also send out that goodness.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, ultimately, if we, like you say, if we don't feel at home in ourselves, that belonging, how can we resonate beyond that? If we don't feel safe within ourselves, how can we feel safe outside of ourselves?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I've at this point I've been doing this for about 24 years, and I've done, last I counted, like over 17,000 sessions.
Wow.
And if you practice long enough, you get kind of those numbers. And so that's my favorite things to help with, is helping people get clear, restore their nervous system so they can feel healthy and whole and simple, so that they can make choices to be able to take action on their divine assignment.
Mm. Beautiful. Something that just came to me just to close the podcast. Would you mind doing a closing song for us to?
Sure, certainly. And I just want to say too, my background is my art, so I do visionary art.
Yeah. Can you describe that
So
for the people that might be listening in
yeah,
audio as well?
yeah. Okay, so it's a tiger, and so I was drawing the 4 elements. So this is fire.
Mm.
So when we're speaking about divine masculine and that kind of fiery rising up for goodness and safety and protecting the feminine, that's what that tiger's about. And this is my art printed on a towel. All right, so I am singing to equality, which the root of that is everyone's belonging, which is the root of that is self-acceptance, and saying, I see you, this too belongs to all aspects of ourselves, our sadness, our strength, our anger, our vulnerability, and our wisdom. I see you. I am here. You. Hey, only I am. Oh, yo, oh, yo. Amea. Oh, oh, oh,
Thank you. Thank you. Robin, thank you so much. Um, Conversations like this are the reason why I podcast. It's just been
oh, good.
absolute honor to have you on the show, and you share and your not only your journey but your experiences, your wisdom, and everything else. And I can't help, like I said, feel I've only scratched the surface today. But
Mm-hmm.
if people want to grab a copy of your book or want to have a session with you, or what do they do? Where can we send them, Robin?
Mm-hmm. So my website is my name, robinlandsong.com. My book is Loving Bravely, a memoir, miraculous near death of a girl abducted, shot during war, and sung back to life by an African woman. And so that's available on all booksellers, Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, all the stores online. You can get the ebook, the physical book. The audiobook right now is on Audibles, and soon it will be out on other audiobook platforms. And yes, I do, right now I do individual sessions, group sessions, classes. I do the free transmissions, and it's all on my website, robinlandsong.com. And I can't wait to come to Australia and do some in-person things there, in-person singing.
Have you been here before?
I have not, but I'm about to go to